Thank you very much for checking out my videos here on YouTube. So this is in my little 3D printer bench area and my little desk, and my artwork is of course up on the wall there. So those are the things I like to create when I've got a little spare time. Um, that's just what I like to do. So today we're doing an unboxing after I opened the box. Again, we're kind of doing a take two on this one because we got interrupted by a phone call midway through. So I've got my little Turo vehicle, which is my Outlander. It's currently out and about, and they just picked it up, and it was a point of contact without having to come in contact with the guest. So in other words, I do basically I have a little key box that I have on the vehicle. They have the code for it. They can take the key out, off and running they go. Everything's already verified ahead of time. No real issues from that standpoint. Little whiskers going on there. So the it makes it kind of an easy process. So if you're doing Turo, I'm going to tell you, get a key box. It's going to save you a lot of headaches, a lot of insecurities. Get yourself a GPS system so you can actually track the vehicle in present time so you know what's going on. Works really well from that standpoint. I did a video on it earlier, kind of an unboxing. I've got a car that I need to put one on. So I've got my Cruze out front, and we're just doing some basic maintenance to it. And then at some point, we're going to install the GPS system, and I'll go deep into that one. But today, we got the elusive intake. So this came all the way in from China. So figure that one out. Shipped, I think, through Mexico. This is what I think happened. So I think they shipped it to Mexico to a warehouse. And from Mexico, it gets shipped to Canada. So we're talking a lot of hands on this thing. This was about $137, and plus tax about $150 and change, right? So $160 is basically what it is. Now, I looked at my old one, and I wanted to verify that it was problematic, but it was really hard because it was crusted up, it was dirty, it was filthy. I couldn't really see anything in here, but when I went and pressed my little finger on it, I could basically close the valve, which settled all my running issues. The engine just smoothed right out. So within here is a PCV valve. Now, normally back in the day, this would sit externally, and you would never replace this. This would be a component that would be on the car for almost end of life for the vehicle, right? Unless you had an intake gasket leak, which would usually be associated with something of like an overheating or something else had gone on, right? Or you broke it open to clean it or report it, to do a host of things, right? So typically this is pretty much a hardly ever replace item, like never, right? So what GM has done is they've integrated this component, which is your PCV valve, as a solid build into the actual unit itself. So when you have to go and replace this component, which back in the day would be like $3, $5, you just snap it out, plug her in, you'll be ready to go. Now they're built in. Now to test the PCV valve, I'm going to see if I can actually get it under the camera. May not. No, you can't really see it. But there is a red stripe within the actual valve here that you can actually physically see. It's deep in there. On my current vehicle that I have, this is clearly gone. So it's not there at all. So it's a nice way of being able to say, hey, I feel confident now that this is definitely the issue, and this should resolve my little vacuum issue and my basic idle problem. I think this is going to be it. Now, there's also an additional item on this one, which is basically a little membrane that sits in the actual valve cover, which I think is fine on my car because the valve cover looks like it's been recently replaced. According to paperwork, I think it's about 10 to 20,000 kilometers ago, so I think it's fine. I think this is just finally giving up the ghost, and I'm having some running issues there. Now, a nice thing is it looks fairly straightforward to install. So we'll get to that a little bit later. There's some good videos out there on it as well. So this is not rocket science doing it. It's just time consuming, moving all the little bits and pieces that are in the way. So hopefully tomorrow's weather is decent. I can get that done. And I've got my brakes in. So we're going to do the intake. We're going to do the brakes. And hopefully that gets to the point where I can get the car down to have it safetied. So that's my goal. So I just thought I'd give a little update because I was excited that the package arrived. It was like, hey, so that's a good win for me there. And hopefully we'll see where we're at. My Outlander went out this morning, a little bit of a run around because he had it scheduled for Saturday. And then you ever deal with somebody, you kind of go, wow, you're not organized, or there's something else going on in the background there. Like you shake your head and go, yeah. So he had the booking moved, but really didn't, like, I didn't get a contact with Turo or anything on it, which I thought a little weird. So I was set up for Saturday. Now, luckily, I went out yesterday and I already had the vehicle washed and cleaned and tidied. And I said to run out, put some gas in it this morning. So it was not a big deal, but it was one of those things where you kind of go, confirmation email would have been a good idea just for you, like as a person renting a vehicle, to say, hey, I've decided to change my time. Can I get a confirmation on that? So if you're out there and you're a renter, and which is great, appreciate the business, nothing wrong with that. I always like to follow up. So I'm assuming every other Turo host does the same thing. I follow up with an outline. I say, hey, thank you very much for reaching out and booking my vehicle. I greatly appreciate it. And I do the confirmation. In other words, it's, you're picking up November 1st at 10 o'clock and you're dropping it back off on November 4th, right? It's just the nature of it, right? At 10 o'clock. And then I also include with it more information to follow. The lockbox code will be included in the next email once we've confirmed your driver's license, right? So, and then I ask for the selfie and the driver's license, and I can confirm that through Turo and say, okay, well, we got the right guy. Everything's good, right? From that standpoint. And then I send the directions and say, okay, well, the vehicle is parked in this parking spot. On the back tailgate, there's a lockbox that's attached to it, and you can take the code and you can get the key out. So simple process. It's one of those things where email confirmations, because you're making a trip, I'm assuming, like this gentleman didn't have a long drive, but it's 40 minutes to get up here and find out the vehicle isn't here, after you've moved it a day ahead, which is, more power to you. But it's one of those things where it's going to bite somebody in the butt, probably be me down the road, right? So confirmation, if you're a host, is always a good idea. And have it, I get, in other words, you need that driver's license before you can proceed. Otherwise, you're scrambling at that last half hour, or you're running out to the vehicle to do a photograph and with the guy holding it. And then you go, well, now I've come across a problem, and you have them in front of you with the need to have a set of keys. And it becomes very stressful from that standpoint, where you can kind of say, you know what? I got your driver's license the other day. I put it into Turo. It's accepted. It's fine. Not an issue from that point. It's valid. The dates are proper. Address links up to your, like, everything flows properly. And then it's just a matter of saying, no, everything's done. Then you print off the rental agreement, put it in that little dossier I showed in the last video, and you take the insurance information, you put everything together, and you say, there you go. You're ready to rock, right? So that's just one of those things that, as a host, I'm starting to pick up on, that sometimes the renters are not that organized, or really have that understanding of this could potentially be some liability issues if I don't have these things completed, right? And they just want the shiny keys and to go. So just be aware of it, slow the process down a little bit, get confirmations, and then do up your print, put it on a little dossier, send it out in the vehicle, make sure everything is done. I did my photographs on it just before he left. Oops. Just before he headed out. Let's see if we can see them here on. Again, I apologize. I'm not set up to do like a screen thing or anything like that. So we're just doing it off the cuff. So if you go to Turo and you go to today's, and it'll come up kind of slow. See if it actually shows up. Yeah, so there it is. I think that's blurry enough where you're not going to see the information of the client, which is fine. His information is really limited anyways. It's the driver's license and name is Jeremy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing really to see there. So we go to trip photos. I put 48 in. And the idea with that is again, if you do any research on any other folks out there running a YouTube channel where they talk about Turo, photographs are important. 48 today was a rush job. Normally, on the last one I did about 114, so I'll do like a full detailed one. So this one here, we do things like tire depth. So I use a little loonie to kind of say that's how the tires are when they go out. Again, I'm not looking for that 3% or 5% wear. I'm concerned that they come back bald, so they've been driving like a lunatic. Luckily, that GPS app tells me if they've been driving like a lunatic, so things to expect. Then a full little walk around. So we do the interior, we do the exterior. I'd like to take a copy of the headliner. We do a dashboard one, so it shows there's no trouble codes or engine lights on, and then went out with a full tank of gas. The third row seat, I show the headrests are there, everything's in place for it. Put it back down. Usually I'll ask and say, hey, do you need the third row? And if the person goes yes, then I'll say, well, I'll set it up for you. And if they say no, then I put it back down on the floor because they're probably going to move cargo and they may not be in there, right? So it's funny. It's hit and miss as far as that third row is concerned. I think it's a nice little feature for that odd occasional client out there that needs that extra space, but most people don't actually utilize it, which I find funny. But they still want to rent it. They still want the bigger SUV. So again, we do interior shots, and full exterior. So we do the full 360. I do the undercarriage as well. I do a top of the roof. I take a photograph of the windshield. Again, my vehicle's not mint. There are little marks and scratches on it, so I also document those. And I say, hey, here's a little scratch in the bumper. Here's a little mark in the bumper. And I'm not looking to get somebody on a scratch or a nick or a ding. Like those are pretty minor little things. I'm looking to say, hey, look, if you've backed into a pole and the bumper is bent, it's going to have to get repaired. And I think that's one of the things you have to realize if you're renting out your own car. Like I've got this one I purchased that I like. It used to be an old demo that Mitsubishi had. It's nicely equipped. It's got all the bells and whistles that Mitsubishi offered at the time for that vehicle. So it's a unique vehicle in the Canadian market because in 2014-13, this vehicle and this equipment wasn't really all that common. So it's unique on the road, but it's not a specialty car. It's just a little different, right? As far as that's concerned. Plus, I know the service on it. I know how to repair them. I know little quirks. So again, I've been around them for a while. So I'm very comfortable with that particular vehicle. But it's got some life on it. So in other words, there's a couple little marks here and there, and that's just the nature of how a car operates over time. So if you're putting out your fancy brand new car and you think to yourself, oh, they're probably going to park in a Tim Hortons parking lot right at the front, like right over that yellow line. The guy next to him probably is going to have no choice but to put a ding in that car. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just going to happen. It's just the nature of it. So you got to learn to kind of let go on that stuff. Now there's a good PVR kit or paintless dent remover that you can use that you glue a little tab onto. You can pop them out. They're pretty good. I've got a couple of those. I might show a video on how I pull my little dings and dents out. Usually it takes about 45 minutes to do it, maybe an hour. If it's just a straight door ding, it's easy. If it's been crested or it's got a bit of an angle to it, it's a little harder, in which case you need a bar to go behind. But they're pretty easy to repair, in other words. So I just leave them alone. So it's just the nature of it. Take your photos. Keep all your emails as well with the host feature. It gets saved on Turo, but it also gets saved on Gmail. So I can go back and say, hey, look, this is the time we agreed. This gentleman showed up late, but you know what? I don't care because I keys in the actual vehicle. So he could show up at 2 o'clock. It doesn't matter to me. He said 10, shows up at noon. It's not one of those things where I'm sweating it and taking my day off to run around and sit and wait. So again, one of those things, I think if you're doing a little research online, Audrey down in the States seems to embrace that quite well. And I thought to myself, that's a pretty good move. And one of those things that I thought was a pretty good idea. Again, if you've worked retail before, you know that people tend to either be early or late. They're never always like on the dime. So it's, again, a good option as far as that's concerned. Later on today, I'm going to go out and probably do a little work on the car. I'm waiting for the weather to break. It's It's probably going to be a good day tomorrow, in which case that's where all that stuff will get done. Again, if you've got any questions or you've got any ideas with Turo, this is just a general talk and an unboxing. It's going to be a short little video, 15 minutes, and we'll let you go. Well, thank you very much. Have a pleasant and enjoyable day. And I would appreciate it if you subscribed, because that'll help me smooth some of my production stuff down and also maybe give you a backdrop that'll be more Turo geared cars and stuff. So we'll go from there. Thank you very much. Let's go end.